Hello and welcome to We the Students, a political discussion sponsored by the Nauset Regional High School AP U.S. Government and Politics program in collaboration with Nauset's video production class. In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized the practice of abortion in a landmark Supreme Court case, Roe v. Wade. The ruling was intended to settle one of the greatest cultural issues of the day. And yet, nearly 50 years later, the practice of abortion continues to spark controversy and polarize Americans all across our country. Over the next 30 minutes, the topic of discussion will focus on abortion and whether or not abortion is murder. I'm your guest host, Ben Niggel, a senior at Nauset and a veteran of the AP Government program. Just for the record, opinions expressed here belong to the panelists and are not the views of the Nauset Regional High School or Nauset Regional School District. Now, let's meet our panel. On my left, your right, we have Max Bolaris, Camille Liska, and Scott Carr arguing that abortion is not murder and having the pro-choice philosophy. On my right, your left, we have Hayden Trudell, Bailey Smith, and Matt Dodoli arguing abortion is murder and having the pro-life philosophy. So, let's just jump into it.
We believe that a woman's right to choose should not be limited by government or religious authority, and that their right outweighs any right claimed for an embryo or fetus.
We believe that abortions are murder and should not be protected by the government.
So this was legalized by Roe v. Wade and stated that the Constitution gives a guarantee of certain areas or zones of privacy, and that this right of privacy is broad enough to encompass a woman's decision whether or not to terminate her pregnancy. It's more of the woman's standpoint, not the fetus or embryo.
Wasn't Roe v. Wade also considered a very controversial Supreme Court case because they tried to guess what would happen in the future instead of looking at precedent and what had happened?
Well, it's the case that set the precedent. So it is the first case, and yes, it is controversial, but it ruled in favor of abortions.
But also what I'm saying is the Supreme Court looked out of their general jurisdiction, since isn't the Supreme Court only supposed to deal with the Constitution and not look out and look forward and try to make legislation that hasn't already happened yet?
Well, then how else would they decide this case? This happens with every case that deals with precedent.
It should have been done by states then.
Well, if we want to talk about the Constitution, this could even be applied to the Ninth Amendment, as the court's decision in Roe v. Wade declared the procedure a fundamental right.
But along with that, we are given that everyone has the right to life, so doesn't that go against it?
Actually, the majority opinion in Roe v. Wade says that the word person, as used in the Fourth Amendment, so referring to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, does not include the unborn.
So what would you guys describe a person as?
A person?
Yes, like a living person.
A living human being like you and me, or even a baby, but at this point, they are still a fetus and embryo and are not considered a person yet.
Then how many weeks would you say it would be a human and not a fetus or an embryo?
So are you trying?
Are we talking about weeks in the mother or after
Weeks
birth?
in the mother.
Okay.
So you're trying to refer to third trimester abortions?
I'm talking about just how many weeks would you consider when it's a human?
After 26 weeks, I believe, or no, 20 weeks.
20 weeks?
So at 19 weeks and 6 days, then you believe that they should be able to get an abortion, but then on the 7th day, it's all of a sudden a big...
Yes, this is a topic of women's issues. I mean, you're a woman. You have the choice. I believe that you should have the choice to have an abortion or not. Why bring a baby into this world that's unwanted?
It'll be wanted. I mean...
If you're the mother not wanting a child, why should you be forced to bring in a child?
You don't have
Well, the child's innocent, too. The child hasn't done anything.
I mean, if you have a baby and then you all of a sudden don't want it, you can't just get rid of it. It's your responsibility.
Exactly.
If you made
That's
the
why
choice...
you shouldn't have the baby in the first place.
You could always put the baby up for adoption instead of ending the baby's life.
Then you're still having the 9 months of being pregnant. I mean, you would never experience that, but as a woman, I would.
I would as well, and I still disagree. I think that women should not have the choice to get rid of it. It's going to be a human, and it has the possibility to be a human.
It's not a human at this point when you're aborting it. Abortion is defined as the deliberate termination of a human pregnancy. Not the killing of babies, it's the termination of the pregnancy, so it's more of women's issues.
So what would you say what characteristics make it a human and compared to an embryo or embryo?
Well, embryos and fetuses are both not dependent, and they're not self-determining. Until an embryo or a fetus is capable of leaving the womb and living on its own, then it should be totally okay for a woman to have an abortion.
So what happens if a person's on life support? Is it okay to kill them?
What?
They're
If
a
a
person at that
person's-
point.
But
Okay,
that's the
but an embryo doesn't have any connections yet. It hasn't lived in
Well,
this world. It doesn't yet have the rights
when
of a
would you
citizen
say
of
it's
the
the
United
difference between an
States.
embryo and a fetus?
The difference between an embryo and a fetus? An embryo comes first.
Well, how many weeks? Like, what are the characteristics?
I'm not
you-
sure why that matters.
Well, because my opinion is that around 6 to 7 weeks, the baby will grow, the arms and legs will start to bud, and that they'll have a, the babies will have a continues to grow, and heartbeat becomes a regular rhythm, and the blood pumps through the main vessels. I would consider, since it has a heartbeat pumping at a rhythm, and the blood are going through the vessels, I would consider that a human being. Would you? And it's
Roe v.
starting.
Wade doesn't.
But
Well,
doc-
Roe v. Wade is the opinion of 9 people.
That's true, but it's still a case that set precedent, and it's still the laws that we live by today.
I don't think that you
Yes.
should use something like blood pumping through a body, a main characteristic of being a human being. I mean, if that's the case, then why are we killing deers? I think something like cognitive function or sentience is a lot more important when determining whether or not.
So let's talk about that. So at what point,
Sentient.
and this is for both sides, do you feel that you can call a fetus a human being? Is it at conception, at birth, some point during the pregnancy where that baby can start to have memories? Are there memories? Can babies think while they're in the fetus? Can they sense their environment? What kind of factors does that play in to determining when a fetus is actually a human being?
I would say conception because it has human DNA in it, which makes it human.
I would say at the start of the 3rd trimester, it becomes a human being. Before, it's just an embryo.
Then-
Or even,
What about New York's new law they passed allowing 3rd trimester abortions?
well,
I don't think that anybody gets a third-term abortion just because they decide, I don't want a baby anymore. I think that's a different issue in which mothers are in immediate physical danger or have very pressing mental danger.
yes, and to build off Max, it's actually fewer than 2% of abortions that are provided at 21 weeks or after. And again, this is only in extreme circumstances where the risks of the pregnant woman is seriously threatened and their health is threatened.
in that case, if the woman was threatened and then they did end up having the baby and the woman passed away, would you not think that it would still be selfish to have not had the baby?
So I want to bring Scott in a little bit. Scott, do you want to respond to Bailey's question?
Well, I was just going to say that, I mean, late-term abortions happen not because of a woman, like, late-term abortions happen because a woman and a doctor they don't want to kill the baby, but because of the circumstances. So, like, if anything's happened, if the mother's in danger, then the abortion is necessary.
Are you counting if the mother is in danger and the baby is in danger, or just if the mother's in danger?
Both. If the baby's in danger, then, like, if you bring it into the world, it's going to suffer.
What do you mean?
If the baby is in danger in the mother and you bring it into the world, then it will suffer in the world and have, like, that danger in the world.
Because many fetuses are born with, or even in the womb, they develop mutations
Yeah.
or other disorders, and basically death is guaranteed for them before or even shortly after birth. And if that's the case, why both put the baby through that pain and the mother through the pain of giving birth?
Well, you're
if
also
the child's
looking at a
destined
very
to
small
die?
percentage of the abortions that are that way. Because
Well, we're talking about the late-term abortions.
late-term
and the
Which
topic
are
that we're
already
on
very
right
small.
now.
Oh, may I go
Percent.
back to that? So you said it was 2%, right?
Yes, fewer
So-
than 2%.
So according to your statistic, and using mine, in 2015 there were 638,169 abortions in 2015. So 2% of that number is a pretty large number. So 2% may sound like a small percentage, but of the annual abortions, it's a pretty large number.
Okay, well, in that fact, do you know if the mother's life was at risk or if there were other health factors?
That's just abortions per year.
And
That's a s-
Right.
why should someone choose having the mother over the child? I mean,
Because it's a woman's reproductive choice. They take control of your own body. No government should be able to tell you what you should or shouldn't do with your own body.
Especially
Well-
when it's something as serious as, like, there's many mothers that if they give birth, they face a serious risk of their own death. And why should it not be that mother's choice whether or not they want to choose their own life or the unborn baby's life?
Well,
Because
isn't
it's
it?
completely affecting someone else's life, a future life.
But it's also affecting your own
Isn't
to
the
the point where you may
government's
die.
Isn't the government's job to protect their citizens' rights?
Again,
So isn't
And
if you guys said 20
Commanding a
weeks is-
woman to die so that her baby's life is saved, how is that
I'm
protecting
not-
her
They're
not
rights in any way,
command-
shape, or form?
They're not commanding a woman to die.
If they're faced with any sort of defect and there's a very high risk or like destined chance for them to die in giving birth, why should they be forced to and
You
to
can
give up
always have
their
a
own life?
A C-section could always save the baby and the mother. Because
Okay,
you're-
wh-
not
what
in
if-
all circumstances. That's not true.
But you can't just look at the small percentages. You have to look at the bigger picture in some of these. You can't just focus on some minute percentages and make a whole point off of that. You have to look at the bigger picture.
But we're talking about a small section right now. We're talking about whether or not a woman should be able to get an abortion if her life is in danger. Say she gets
If the
pregnant
woman and the baby are going to die, I do believe that we should try to save the woman. But I do not believe that if the woman's fine and the baby's going to survive, that we should exterminate the baby. I do not believe that's something our government should be supporting.
So what you're saying is third trimester abortions, where the health or life of the pregnant woman is threatened, you believe that women should have access to abortions.
Physical health. I want to make sure,
okay.
because in New York State, it's considered, mental health is considered a factor in abortions too. So,
Well,
if
don't you believe that a woman's mental health is important?
I believe that a baby's life is more important than a woman's mental health during 3 months.
So a woman should be forced to bring into the world a baby that she doesn't want that will affect her mental health. You think you can force that on a woman?
Again, there's always the option of adoption.
There's
See, but
already.
there's-
Hold on.
Sorry.
Sorry. No, go ahead. My bad.
There's 45% of all pregnancies among American women are unintended. And you can think whatever you want about that, but babies, as a fact, should not be coming into the world unwanted. And you can't change a woman's mind. If she gets pregnant and she doesn't want to have that baby, it takes a whole lot. It's very unlikely that she's going to change her mind and all of a sudden want the child. The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment stated that unintended pregnancies are associated with birth defects, low weight, maternal depression, increased risk of child abuse, lower educational attainment, delayed entry into prenatal care, and a high risk of physical violence during pregnancy, and reduced rates of breastfeeding.
But you also have to remember, the baby hasn't done anything. That was the mother and father's fault. The baby's innocent. Can we all agree with that?
Yes, we can agree that the baby
So
is
why should
innocent.
the baby
be-
when
Yeah,
you
it's a
consider
fetus.
it a baby. When you
Yeah.
consider it a baby, that's
then
the
the
key word.
fetus is innocent.
Do you not think
No,
that the
the fetus isn't something
Well,
yet.
the
It's not in
fetus
life
hasn't
yet.
done
the
anything.
fetus does?
I don't think that that life has intrinsic value.
So
Fetus does not yet have
when would he
value
give intrinsic value to life then?
when a baby is born.
So one,
So
When they
would
come
you
into
say
this world,
that
when they are
a
sentient
baby
and
at
they're living outside of the womb on
eight
their
and a half
own?
months is not a valuable life?
Obviously, depending on circumstances, I don't think that you should be getting rid of all those children. But when there are other existing factors that are threatening the life of the mother or even of the baby for any reason, then yeah, I'm going to prioritize the woman over the fetus.
So I want to talk a little bit more about a hypothetical. And so in countries where abortion is illegal, where the government stepped in and said, we're going to protect the baby or the fetus's life and you cannot get an abortion, the inevitable is that some women will choose to go seek out an illegal abortion. So if in the United States abortions were made illegal, do you think a valid argument for keeping abortions legal would be that too many women would seek out an illegal abortion, which could have so many consequences in terms of it's dangerous, it could kill the mother, and what are your guys' take on that? And maybe we can start with Hayden, because he hasn't gotten a word in yet.
Yeah, I'd say that the idea that because people will do something illegally, the government should just let them do it anyways. I don't think that's something that the government should be funding or be a part of, to say basically people are going to break the law anyways, let's just let them do it.
Okay, well then let's take that into drug addiction. Should the government not step in and try to provide rehabilitation centers and any other sort of way to help get people up on their feet again if they're struggling with an addiction
But
Well,
I think
in order
that's-
to protect the wellness of the citizens of the U.S.?
I think that's different because they're actually protecting the person, and they've already broken the law, and they have laws against drugs. I mean, it's not like
Okay, but the government still tries to provide relief
Yes.
to those that are struggling with addiction.
I would say, Max, it's more comparable to drugs are illegal. People still get drugs. So should we legalize drugs? The simple answer is no. But so if abortions were made illegal, yes, of course, a small minority of people would still get abortions.
I don't know if
I
you
wouldn't
call
say
it
that's a small minority.
68,000 maternal deaths occur worldwide each year because of unsafe abortions that are performed. When abortion is legal, the process is so safe that a woman's risk of dying is 0.6 in 100,000. You're 14 times less likely to die getting an abortion than you are giving birth to a child.
And like Max said, 45% of all pregnancies among American women are unintended. Do you know how many abortions, if you made abortion illegal, do you know how many people would try and seek out those abortions still? I mean, it's
We
a
don't know
woman's
because
choice.
there's no statistic towards it. Because if it was made illegal, we wouldn't know right at this point in time about how many people would be willing to go that far.
Well, in Max's statistic, which I also have, it says that, what was it? Sorry. It says that 68,000 maternal deaths worldwide each year occur because of illegal abortions. And these are all in developing countries where abortions
Remember,
were.
the 68,000 out of how big is our world right now? 7 billion?
So you don't think those lives are
Excuse
valuable?
me,
I
I think
do
you're
believe
going,
that those
remember when
wa-
you were talking about the 2% of abortions that occur during the third trimester, you're going to call 68,000 a small number, when before you were talking about, what was it, 2% of 600,000, which is 12,000? I don't see how that makes sense. That's less people than here, and now you're calling this number insignificant.
I'm talking about on a global scale. This is just in the United States.
Yes.
Okay,
So it's a
And?
very big difference between the United States population and the global population.
okay, but it's still 68,000 people in comparison to
believe that their
12,000.
life is
Doesn't every
valuable, and I
life
do-
matter?
Yes, I do.
Then how come you're trying to dispute 68,000 lives?
No, what I'm saying is those 68,000 people should not have gotten and done an abortion, and because of those 68,000 people illegally did an abortion, they should not
Okay,
change the laws to ban
But again,
abortion.
that's like saying people shouldn't do drugs.
It's still going to happen.
It's still going to
inevitable.
happen.
Yes,
and
so
for
should we
that
legalize
reason-
drugs then?
No, we shouldn't legalize drugs. We should try to provide ways for them to be safe, to go to rehab. We should provide information for them to be able to use drugs safely if they're so addicted that they're not going to be able to stop.
Okay, but back to the topic of abortion. Do you believe that reproductive choice should be given to the women so they have control over their own bodies, or do you think other people should regulate it?
Well, I believe that the government's one of their primary jobs is to protect the rights of the human, or of their citizens, sorry, I have to make that clear. And so I do believe that a baby in a womb is a baby, so it should have the rights of an American citizen. And I
Well-
believe, because of my belief in that, I believe that the government should protect their life.
Well, the U.S. government is not on your side for that because they don't consider the unborn
Yes,
part.
but that's why I said I believe.
So I want to kind of change topics a little bit, and throw out the question that a lot of abortions, like you guys were saying, aren't necessarily because they just don't want the baby. There's a lot of other factors that contribute. So maybe we can talk a little bit about incest and rape and how that plays into abortions, and whether or not we're going to make special exceptions for those cases, or if you get raped or there's some kind of incest, you still can't get an abortion.
Starting with that, only 1% of all abortions are from rape or incest. So if we were going to legalize all abortions, that would be 99% that were the woman's fault or the man's fault, both.
So you think we should just disregard those 1% of people
I
who were
should
raped?
say that we should make I should say that this part's actually very gray area.
Okay.
I mean, I think that again, there are so many other options than just having to keep the baby.
So you think that they should still bring the baby to full term and then give it up to adoption?
I think it's a hard issue on many levels, but that
Yeah,
yes,
I'm sure it's hard for the woman who was raped also.
I'm sure it is, but that it's still a baby. There's still something growing inside of them. It's a potential
But
life.
again, it's not a baby, it's a fetus or an embryo.
But it's a potential life. You
And
can't just disregard that fact.
It's a
I'm sorry, but
potential
women
life, but
and
it's
chil-
not yet a life.
You're also talking about women and children who are raped. There are children who are 13 years old who are raped, and you're saying that they should be forced to carry out a pregnancy to full term and bring into this world their rapist's child. These are 13-year-old girls, and that does happen.
So
You also have to remember, again, I know I've said this multiple times, the baby hasn't done anything. It was the rapist.
Yeah, neither did
Okay.
the 13-year-old child. But the
Yes,
rapist
I
doesn't
do-
have to bring
I
the
agree
baby
that
to
is
term.
wrong.
It's a man. It's the woman who has to bring it. It's the woman who has to bring a child into the life.
So I want to propose another question, and this is not too much of a stretch, so let me go on it. Federal laws, and this is mostly for you guys, but of course pitch in. Federal laws protect bald eagles, sea turtles, and other animals while they are still inside the eggs. Do you agree with those laws? And if so, do you feel that protecting animal embryos are worth, or do you feel that it's worth protecting animals' embryos and not humans in the womb?
Well, I think you have to look at population there. When you're protecting things like sea turtles, it's because they're an endangered species. If we were living in like the Handmaid's Tale and there was a deficit of fertile people, then yeah, we would be protecting all embryos and fetuses for the furtherment of human civilization. But that's not an issue here. We're facing an overpopulation crisis, and in one way, abortion is a way to curve that.
So you're saying that it's okay to kill a baby in the womb because of
Again, define
an
what you're saying.
overpopulation? I'm saying a baby is
So after 20 weeks?
no, a baby is before 20 weeks, in my opinion.
A fertilized egg.
So I just want to make this clear. You guys,
So an
I
egg,
think,
not a baby.
I think what we're arguing here
I
is
think they're the
abortion across the table. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys are arguing that any abortion is murder, and you guys are arguing that any abortion is not murder. Just
Yes.
With
doesn't matter
one
where the
exception,
weeks are.
that if the mother's going to die
Okay.
and the baby's going to die, in my personal opinion.
But you never answered the question about rape. You just responded that it's a gray area. Can you define
Yes.
that?
Well, I don't really know what I believe on that.
Okay.
Hayden,
Well-
do you have anything to contribute?
Well, what you were saying about how we're dealing with an overpopulation and it's a way of rounding it, I think that's a very interesting way of putting it, because it kind of makes it sound like we have so many people that we should, like, it's kind of like cutting off more people coming to this world. So it's kind of acknowledging the fact that those will be human lives that will grow up. I mean, I don't think it's fair to say, oh, because there's so many people, we just will stop.
Well, I mean, it's a realistic standpoint. If we illegalized all abortions, if abortions were never legalized in this country, or anywhere in the world, if there were no abortions, we'd currently have 9.6 billion people in this world. That's tacking on an extra China and India, and we would not be able to sustain all of those people. It's a real and upcoming crisis.
So, because of other people, because of the population, you would say our population is so large, it's justified to kill a baby.
It's not a baby.
We keep coming
It's-
back
it's
to the
not
same
a,
issue.
We're going to
We
keep
define
coming
it
back
at
to the
different
same
points.
issue.
Yes.
But if you think that we should just start cutting off the population, so you think that we should just start cutting off all the potential lives rather than, I mean, obviously I don't think that we
Again,
should just.
potential
Again, I'm not
lives.
saying all of them. I'm saying
Not
we should
lives
be.
yet.
I'm saying you should have the choice to cut off a potential life or
Well-
fertilized egg or fetus or embryo,
So why do
whatever
you
you
not
want to
believe
call
it's
it.
okay to cut off the potential, an embryo and an egg of a bald eagle or turtle?
Because those are endangered species, like I said.
So would you
They're
say
not
that
dealing
you're-
with an overpopulation crisis. We are.
But
How come, why would our lives of a happy life with room to grow up in, how come that's more important than the lives of embryos or babies, however we want to put it, about to be born, who will grow up and, we'd hope have the same life that we do, but we decide because we don't want to live in an overpopulation, they don't get to live at all.
Again, you said a happy life. Many of these women who are, if they're forced to bring a baby into this world, they will not be happy. And as a result of that, I'm sure they won't have a happy home life because their child is legitimately
you can put
unwanted.
up a child for adoption.
And
Yes,
You
but
don't
there's
have
already
to live with the child.
there's already
The foster care system
foster
has
care
like
system
some of the worst-
425,000 kids in the foster care system, and putting
Where are they
kids
gonna
in
go?
risk homes that are
Many of those
unsafe for
children-
children. They are at risk for rape,
you
sexual
wanna- if you
assault,
wanna-
violence, bad parenting.
If you want
Many
to
of
find
those
every
children won't
foster
find
child a
homes.
home and then talk to us about putting more children into the foster care system, go ahead. But right now, that is already an issue that does not need any more
But I
children.
think-
The amount
So
of-
your solution is
life-
to just kill the child.
And the
Before-
amount
No,
of,
no,
not a
yeah.
child.
the amount
Sorry,
of money
kill the
that
baby
goes
before
into
that.
adoption,
Let's let Hayden speak.
Well, I mean, I think their life is more important than possibly having a rough childhood. I mean, they could grow up and be so many amazing things, and I don't think it's fair to say, well, we should just not let them live because they could have a really tough life growing up. I just don't think that's fair to say you don't get to live because you could be putting put into a spot
I mean, that was just
might-
based off of when you said they'd have a happy childhood.
And I mean, I don't
Okay.
think that if someone was going to get an abortion and they ended up not to, then their life would be so bad because any childhood can be bad. It doesn't have to be this.
Yeah, well, imagine being a child who's unwanted by their parents. Go talk to those children.
So we don't have much more time, but I want to ask one more question. A big part of the abortion discussion is contraceptives, whether that's the morning after pill, condoms, any sort of type of contraceptive. How does that weigh into this debate? Should we provide more instead of saying yes to abortions, should we provide free condoms? Is there some kind of aspect that contraceptives come into this?
They aren't 100%. No system of contraceptive that is currently available 100% just eliminates the possibility of a pregnancy. And so for that reason, I don't think it's fair to say, oh, we're going to give you all these contraceptives. If you get pregnant, it's your fault. All sorts of things happen that are out of people's control, no matter how hard they try.
Well,
And right now, each year, 1 million American teenagers become pregnant, and 78% of these pregnancies are unintended. So yes, if you provide more contraceptives, that would probably help the situation, but still, abortion should be accessible if their plan doesn't work out in the first place.
well, my opinion on this, I believe contraceptives that stop the sperm from meeting the egg are okay, since it's not fertilized. It's not it's not life yet, or the start of creation of life.
So you think you should take away the morning after pill also?
Yeah.
And then what? Just be left with tons more pregnancies that can be eliminated later on?
So
I mean,
even-
I don't understand that.
Like teenagers should be then forced to have their child? Like think of kids at our school now.
Well, do you think kids should be doing this stuff?
Teenagers are going to have
Actually-
sex no matter what.
That's not
Four in
something
every
you're ever going
five,
to change.
yeah, 4 in every 5 Americans begin having intercourse before the age of 20.
So you're saying that because of a choice a kid made, we should kill off another human life?
Not a human life yet.
It's,
But-
so what doesn't make it a human life?
But the burden falls on the woman, not the man. A man can go out and have sex and literally just walk away after and have nothing to do with it. But a woman is the one who has force on the child. And it's the fact that controlling your reproductive health empowers women, and taking that away can affects their entire rest of their life.
So unfortunately, we're just about out of time, so we'll have to hold our discussion there. We want to thank Nauset Regional High School's television production class and the Lower Cape TV for making this valuable experience possible for all of us. This concludes another episode of We the Students, a political discussion sponsored by Nauset Regional High School's AP U.S. Government and Politics program. I'm Ben Niggel. Thank you for watching.